Okay, our next presentation is controlling your online reputation and image. And this is one of the things I actually talked to my 14-year-old about. I mean, I think everybody needs to be concerned with what's their personality on the web. And there's so many iPhones and everybody is connected that it's become more and more important for law firms to maintain control over their brand. So we have Nancy Maryland. I can't see the slide very well.
You want to look at mine?
So, and she just did her first podcast today, right?
Last Friday.
Last Friday?
Launched,
she did her first podcast.
Yeah.
And Amy Descott. And they'll be talking about online reputation.
Hey, go ahead.
So we're just going to give a slightly extended introduction, which will take just a second.
The next 30 minutes, okay.
Yeah, so just so you know a little bit more of who we are. I'm Amy Descott. I work at Weil, which is an international firm based in New York City, and I'm the Associate Director of Communications, so I oversee everything from the internal and external social media, and also all of the awards and nominations and rankings and the whole bit. And I've always worked at in-house at large global firms.
No?
Yes.
Okay. Is this staying on? Hello? Here I am. Hi, I'm Nancy Maryland, and I am as you can pretty much see here, marketing, social media, and content strategist, speaker, trainer, and all that good stuff. And I work with lawyers, law firms, and legal marketers, and started out, if I tell how many years ago, it's just too telling. So I will tell you, I started out a long time ago at Baker & Daniels, now Faegre. Baker & Daniels is their director of marketing. And then went out on my own in 2002 and started what was Merlin Marketing and turned into Merlin Marketing and Social Media in 2008 when I met and fell in love with social media as a group of great tools for law firms to incorporate into their marketing strategy. And thanks to Elizabeth for mentioning the podcast. It is brand new, and I'm kind of excited about it, a little bit giddy in fact, so you'll have to forgive me if you see me online acting a little too excited about it. I am excited. And largely because of what it offers for law firms.
And I'll just go over our agenda very briefly, and then Nancy will begin the real presentation. So we are going to go over responsible use of social and digital media. And actually, I should say Nancy will be covering the first 3 points here. Social network boundaries and etiquette, and also transparency and branding. And then I will talk to you about what to do when things go wrong.
Okay, got it. Sorry. Okay, I got the drill. Let's, as we just talked about, let's first talk about responsible use of social media. You guys have probably heard this so much before, but it very much mirrors what's going on in real life. If there are things that your attorneys are not supposed to be doing face-to-face, they definitely aren't supposed to be doing them online. So all of a sudden, I know, yeah. And it's funny because as often as I think these are so basic, and I think, do people really want to hear that? Somebody will say, trust me. I get asked questions by my attorneys all the time about, can I approach this person? What can I say? Am I allowed to do that? And so I guess it's a reminder that it's okay sometimes for you guys to remind them. These are pretty serious communication tools. They're not toys. They can be a lot of fun, and fun doesn't necessarily mean frivolous. It just possibly means that, like, a lot of you in here and I have relationships that have been nurtured and furthered because of our relationship in social media. And it's the same thing for your attorneys. So once they get it down and they've done their due diligence and they have a comfort level with it, they will actually probably find that it's not painful. So again, they'll be okay. Sometimes it's just the hand holding. And then my recommendation is always to use a mature, and make sure you see the next line, social media and community manager, and that definitely does not mean age to me. Mature just means, and you guys all know this, they have a sense of what's right and what's wrong, and they've used these tools before. They didn't necessarily just come to you for an internship in their sophomore year of college and haven't been out in the real world to really experience what happens and what the ramifications are when somebody makes a misstep, or how to talk about what's going on at the firm in a mature manner, and maybe how not to slip up and talk about that they went out last night and went drinking and, oh, accidentally I cross-posted it to the firm's account. Not that mature people can't do that too. Seriously, I mean, it happens, probably more often than not. But so it's always my recommendation just to be cautious and to make sure you use somebody that's a little bit has been out there a little bit more and understands what's going on. And as with in-person networking, there are a few boundaries and a little bit of etiquette to adhere to. And this one is so simple, but I think it's a good one. Just be nice to people. I know people on social media that I think get excited about being kind of jerky and defensive and like they're in court fighting somebody tooth and nail. And you know what? If that's your brand, go for it. If you want people to think that you are a pit bull, and that's not, pit bulls aren't mean. If you want somebody to think that you are not a nice person and that somehow serves your practice better, I'm not going to stop you. But if it doesn't, then just be nice. Don't pile on. When there's something going on online, whether it's local, national, international, or right in your own office, and it's somebody maybe you don't know, and you think your attorneys think they can get away with piling on and saying, yeah, what a jerk, or we would never do that, or I can't believe they did that. You know what? That's public, and that doesn't go away. You can delete it, but it doesn't go away. So I would recommend just don't pile on. Ethical restrictions are really serious business. And so as with every other communication tool that we all use, it's wise to make sure that we understand what's going on in every jurisdiction. And as you guys know, who lives in what they think are the wackiest states for online advertising rules? Indiana? Florida? New York? Anybody else? Yeah. And some of that stuff is not consistent with real-life networking. So it's really important to make sure that we study. And even, when something isn't understood, call the bar, call the jurisdiction and interview them. I did that when Florida came out with what I thought were some really interesting rules and interpretations about a year ago because I wanted to blog about it. And I got, one of the staff counsel talked to me for a moment. I think he was a little bit defensive at first, thinking I was there to attack him, and I wasn't. And when I kept asking him questions, he kind of calmed down a little bit and gave me some really good information. I still didn't like what I heard, but at least it let me know what to be careful with on behalf of law firms. So I would, dig. If you think it's kind of weird that they say you have to put a disclaimer inside a 140-character tweet, call somebody and say, are you serious? I mean, seriously, how do you want us to do that? So just a suggestion. And then before you get into a crisis situation, and Amy's going to talk about a lot of these, I would recommend to your attorneys that they build what I call social capital or social equity. And that is that you've spent enough time online and made enough relationships with people, enough positive relationships with people, that if something does go wrong, then you've built up the capital enough for people to be a little bit more forgiving. A good time to build up capital is not right when a crisis is occurring. That's not the time to come out and say, we're wonderful people, we're a great firm, look at all the good stuff we do. It's those it's almost like I call them digital breadcrumbs that you leave along the way, and the relationships that need to take place online so that people are happy to see what you have to say. And even when you post content, then they actually want to share your content. So I'm really big on having you help your attorneys build that social capital. Again, just more boundaries and etiquette. I would recommend to remind attorneys it's not about them. As much and as tempting as it is to treat social media like broadcast networks, where it's just, we're going to throw our commercial out there and tell everybody what we do, it's not. And that's why it's called social media for a reason. If somebody, it's no different than walking into a business after hours or a firm reception, and if they just ran up to a group of people and started handing out business cards and saying something to them about them, hey, I know you want to meet me, don't you? This is what I do for a living, and gosh, I'm great, and this is my experience. Well, what would everybody think of that person? Well, what a bore, and I really don't want to spend any time with you. So again, it's not about them, it's about other people. They need to talk to them, learn what is important to them, and sometimes that's by using listening tools, or it is as basic as just spending time there. Observe what people are talking about. When you watch, if you know who all your target markets are, members of the media, referral sources, influencers, and potential clients and current clients, and your attorneys follow them, it's not going to take long before they realize, by watching their conversation and their content across all of these media, what's important to them and what would make them happier than if they shared their content. I mean, when people share my stuff, I was like, I can't believe somebody took the time to do that, and it's always a little bit of a humbling experience. So clients are the same way. So I would just recommend that they take some time and observe and figure out what it is that's important to those people they want to network with online. And then be really careful in the automation. The last bullet point. There's so many great tools out there to actually automate and pre-schedule your social media content. And I think that's okay to a point, but my caveat is, if you're going to pre-schedule anything, make sure that whomever is doing that, if it's an attorney, make sure it's the attorney, or if it's the department, make sure it's the department, that you're still circling the wagons. Because if somebody makes a comment, you don't want to be an absentee poster. There's nothing more obvious than if scheduled content goes out and it's like crickets. Somebody says, oh yeah, great point. Or they retweet it, or they share it on LinkedIn or even Facebook, and no one's there to acknowledge it. It's like having a conversation, somebody says something to you, and you don't say a word. Well, how weird is that? That's not a relationship builder. So if you're going to pre-schedule, go ahead. Just make sure you're really close by and that you're getting notifications, and for your attorneys as well. And then a little bit about why these tools are so great and why transparency in them is important and why they're good for branding. I often recommend to follow these 7 stages of social media. And we were talking about this a little bit ago. It really could be, we could spend hours talking about these 7 steps, but I won't. You're probably thankful for that at the moment. But if any, I will touch on them briefly, and I will also say I'm happy to turn this into something longer, a PDF with descriptions, if anybody thinks that would be a benefit. Then just write 7 steps on a business card and give it to me, and I'll make sure I turn it into something more permanent that you can have. But just a quickie, just to recommend to your attorneys, you have to lay some really good infrastructure if they're going to, and I'm not going to say successful in social media, because success is really relative. What's successful for me is very different from what's successful for you or for Roy or for Elizabeth or Cheryl. So the first one is the preparation. They have to get all their accounts reserved. If they don't, even if they don't want to use them right now, then their names are going to be gone, or somebody's going to poach them like they used to do website URLs. So I would still recommend that people go in and reserve everything they can. And if their name is already gone, you can come up with something, a middle initial, or there are other ways to get your names. Communication is where you just barely put up a couple messages. And I recommend that you do this because if someone goes to check you out and there are no messages on your social media profiles, you're not going to look very good. And people are going to think, oh, that person really doesn't care about being here. Why do I need to follow them back? And so I would recommend, and even if it's, gosh, new to LinkedIn, just trying to figure everything out, looking forward to meeting my colleagues in whatever, intellectual property, you name it. And it could be as simple as that, just a couple of quickie messages. Then connection. It's where you start to connect with people. If it's that you wanted to know, in-house people at large law firms that care about whatever, you might look at Amy's profile and see who she's following. And it's perfectly legal and ethical to follow the people she's following. So your attorneys need to look no further than all of their target audiences and to see who their connections are. And then they will all of a sudden have more connections and more friends and followers than they ever hoped or wanted to have, probably. So it really is not, at that point, it's not as hard as many think it is. Observation, I think, is key. I will usually recommend watch what people do for a while. and you'll figure out pretty quickly what you don't like and what you do like in the way others are posting. And you pretty much then begin to form your own style. And no one's is the same, and no one's should be the same, and no one should feel that there's a right and a wrong way. Communications where you can step up the conversation. You know, if you're following John Byrne, all of a sudden you say, hey, John, you know, I just joined Twitter, and is there anything I should know? And John will, of course, because John's John, he will reply to you and give you really good recommendations. And my brother did it to me this morning, my older brother. He's finally on Twitter, and finally, I say finally because it's sort of in the family, and I think my whole family should be a part of it. And he's the last holdout. And I got a tweet from him this morning with no photo yet. And he said, you know, at Nancy Merland, hey, am I doing okay? And it was his first tweet. I said, yeah, I was really excited. I was in my room, and I'm out loud, yes, he's here. And so we had a little conversation. And I didn't want to scare him, though, because he would be like, okay, I'm finished. And so that's the, you know, it's not good to have Nancy Merland as a sister when you're getting into social media. And then communicate, yeah, so that's 2.0. Education is where, you know, you learn. You're in these places to learn from other people as well. And also, of course, to teach other people. So it's important to keep that in mind. Your attorneys can learn more than they ever thought they knew because of watching what's going on. And then collaboration, I've done this, many of us have done this. We eventually start doing business with people we have never even met face-to-face because we've spent time getting to know them online. And that is not an exaggeration, and it is one of the most beautiful things I've ever experienced because it is built on complete trust and conversation, not that they've actually seen each other face-to-face. So that's, again, those are the 7 steps. If you want more on them, or if that's just more than enough, then you let me know. About the transparency part, really critical, and Amy touches on this too. I would recommend to your attorneys, don't ever be somebody that you're not. You don't have to be fancy if you're not. You don't have to act more sophisticated or more down to earth if you're not. Just relax and be who you are. If you don't know something, you ask. You ask somebody, and it's okay to do that. If you mess up, you got to apologize, and it's okay. You know, it doesn't mean you're anything's wrong with you or you're flawed. It just means, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know, or I didn't realize you switched firms. Yeah, it's so nice to see you again. And just try to be sincere because that's a lot more memorable in the long run than being sort of terse and jerky to people. Social media is, I have found this social networking is the great equalizer. Who's from what they think, and I'm not going to give numbers, but who thinks they're from a really small firm in here? All right. Who's from what they consider a really large firm? Great. Well, the nice thing about social media is that there is no reason why your firm can not look as sophisticated and as capable and qualified to do what you do than a mega firm. There is absolutely no reason because no one is in your office space. No one's looking at your building. No one is, I'm sorry, we haven't even greeted. And no one actually sees your whole body to size you up. You know how we are as human beings. We judge. And first impressions are often odd. So the really nice thing is that all of a sudden, if you take an active approach to social networking, you're a bit strategic about it, of course, and you fit it in as additional tools to the social media and business development and marketing plans, then there is absolutely no reason why you can't hold the same position in your potential clients' minds as a firm that is 100 times the size of you. Now, the good thing about that is it's great for a small firm. The scary thing about that for large law firms is that competition is at your doorstep. So it really, I think this is a call to everyone to step up what they're doing online and make sure that they're really getting all their pieces in place so that this great equalizer is going the direction that your firm needs it to go. Amy's turn.
Okay, so we should have built in some scary music or something to the presentation to now shift to when things go wrong. So things do go wrong, as probably everyone in this room does know. Just to set the stage for what we'll talk about, I'm just going to run through some examples of crises that have happened over the past few years with major companies. You're probably familiar with these, so I'll just go quickly. there's a lot written about them, so if you want more information, just do a simple Google search. They're not in any particular order either. So JP Morgan, after Twitter went public, JP Morgan was the underwriter on that. Their marketing team, or marketing PR team, was given the assignment of come up with an out-of-the-box, use of social media. So they did, and so what they did was they said, well, let's put up an executive for Q&A, and the purpose is for career advice, so to show a more human side of the company, and they'll put an executive, students can ask about careers. So they did that. They put up one tweet about it, and then they put a second tweet out saying who this executive was. When the second tweet went out, other groups of people caught on to it. But they were more from sort of like Occupy Wall Street. So they weren't really they weren't the students they were looking for. So what happened was, actually, in that 24-hour period from when that second tweet went out, there were over 18,000 very negative questions thrown at Ask JPM. So JP Morgan ended up, they caught on to this, and they did shut down the Q&A early, and they just said something like a bad idea, back to the drawing board. But just to give you an example of one of the questions that came in was, does sleaze wash off with a regular shower, or do you have to use something special like baby's tears? So, so that wasn't really what they were looking for. So McDonald's did something similar where this happened actually before JP Morgan, but they said, oh, let's make hashtag McD stories, so you could go on and tell your stories about McDonald's. So somebody was probably envisioning, that somebody would say, oh, as a child, I always had a Happy Meal on Friday, or, something like that. But instead, what happened was people wrote things like, one time I walked into McDonald's and I could smell type 2 diabetes floating in the air. So McDonald's also, they knew what they were doing. They ended it within a couple hours of being up. But, these things live on, even once they shut them down. Applebee's is probably kind of the craziest one. This is long to explain, so I'll try to do it very quickly. This is the one when the minister, the reason it's minister because God comes up, that's why that's relevant. So she took some people to breakfast. It was a larger party. They add on an 18% tip for large parties. So when she signed the check, she said, God only gets 10%. Why do I have to give you 18%? So another waitress took this receipt, took a picture, put it on Instagram. The person's name was there. Applebee's then fired the person who posted it, saying that it was a violation of their privacy policy because you were, putting out somebody's personal information. The thing is, they had previously put on Facebook similar receipts, but they were of the positive nature of like, I've never been to such a great restaurant, so they right there were caught in a lie. It just very quickly spiraled completely out of control. There's like blow-by-blows online that you can read if you're interested. And I mean, they did everything wrong. It's been known as committing social media suicide. So if you're not familiar with it, it would be worthwhile to look at some of what's written. And basically they took down comments, they lied, they were defensive, they had somebody commenting like all through the night, so it just was a total mess. And then finally the DiGiorno pizza was the use of a hashtag. There's a hashtag called Why I Stayed, and it is for domestic violence. You're supposed to say why I stayed in an abusive relationship, start a conversation about domestic violence. And they just said, oh, why I stayed, and then they said because I think there was pizza. And so clearly that was totally inappropriate. They say it was unintentional. Some people say it wasn't unintentional. Who knows? They apologized and said it wasn't right. But again, a lesson of you can do a lot of image or damage to your reputation just by simple things. In social media versus traditional media, so I think now we all have a sense social media, while there is this, fun side and, you're trying to get attention and everything else, it is PR at the end of the day, so you have to approach it that way. So the same principles of crisis communications in traditional PR, so newspapers, magazines, apply to social media. But there is a slight difference with social media, which you see in some of the examples, is that you're exposed to the World Wide Web when it comes to social media, which makes it a little bit more scary. So, you know, when you get called from the New York Times about something negative that's happened in your firm, that's a bad situation and you got to deal with it, and it can be stressful and everything else, but you're dealing with a journalist. In this case, you're dealing with the world, and you know, you get these, you know, groups of people like, you know, Occupy Wall Street, who have these agendas, and like Nancy said, there's some people who just want to go on and, you know, have a fight, and so it can create a mob-like atmosphere, and that's where you see these, you know, tens of thousands of tweets happening overnight, and it can get really out of control. So what can you do to maintain control? So this is always sounds simple, but it's very difficult, which is remaining calm. And I think this is actually probably the most important skill you can bring in these sort of situations, so that you can remain calm, you can try to help others remain calm, and keep a clear head in making your decisions. In doing this, you need to distinguish what you can control and what you can only manage, because you can't control everything, and you have to, I mean, you have to sort of accept that in life, but I think especially going into social media, you know, you're opening yourself up to a whole host of things that you just can't control. So, you know, you can't control what people are going to say, you can't control what people are going to do, but you can control how you respond, and so that's where then you're managing, you know, if something bad is said about you, well then how do you manage that situation, as opposed to how do you control it, because you know, you can't fully control what's happening on the outside. And then similarly, looking at crisis versus drama, and I think this is something that probably happens a lot in law firms, at least in my experience. So, you know, again, in the keeping calm and taking a step back is looking at what is really the crisis and what is the drama, and make sure that you're addressing the crisis and not the drama. So, you know, if it's somebody's ego being bruised over something, which isn't a good situation, and you still have to deal with that situation, that's not necessarily a crisis for your firm. You know, a crisis for your firm is, you know, clients are going to question your abilities. Maybe you're going to get sued. Clients are going to walk away. You won't be able to recruit people next year. So that's another thing, and I think that can be useful when you're in these meetings and you're trying to keep people focused on what you're really trying to achieve. And so then in responding, you know, you definitely need to be calm and think. At the same time, you do need to move fast. But I think one thing to think about is, you know, there's fast, like, and again, every situation is different. So some situation maybe means you can have 2 hours to figure out your plan, and you don't necessarily have to act in the first 20 minutes. Some situations you have less time, sometimes you have more. But the thing is that you just have to know that when you do take action and you respond, you know, you kind of have one shot. So everything you say will be scrutinized. Everything you say will be repeated over and over again, likely, in news stories. And so you want to make sure that what you're saying is the right thing. And in figuring that out, that's where being calm, listening, definitely listening, and also being factual, which is always just a key principle of PR, which, you know, you're dealing in facts, not emotions. And if you disprove, if something's being said about you that it truly is not right, then you disprove it. You don't get defensive, you don't get emotional. There may be times that maybe you did something wrong, so you just can't lie. So that is the worst thing, and you saw that with Applebee's. They thought they were taking control of the situation, but they actually totally lied, and then they took down old Facebook posts, but then of course people have screenshots, and, you know, so it just, you can't lie. And you also have to know when to walk away, or when to just cut the cord, when to say, okay, this was a terrible idea. Like, I think JP Morgan did that, you know. Unfortunately, took them probably, they should have hopefully thought about that before it all went kind of off the rails, but they did walk away. Similarly, McDonald's just closed it down. You know, you have to be willing to just shut things down and walk away when you have to. So we've already touched on many of these things, but what to avoid when dealing with these issues in social media. don't delete things. There may be special situations where somebody is racist or something like that, so then obviously you do, but for the most part, never delete. If you're going to be using hashtags, make sure that whoever is doing that knows what they're doing, so that these words, by using certain words, you're grouping yourself in with certain messages, and that's what you saw with the DiGiorno pizza incident. So again, whether or not it was intentional, but you could see how maybe if you didn't kind of look into it, you would think, oh, maybe that just means something cute. And I think it can come up, and especially large organizations, that if there are kind of social media things coming from different channels, people sometimes think, oh, let's just add a hashtag, but they don't really understand that it might already be, have some sort of meaning. Never be defensive. That's just, I know that everybody knows that. And that is hard, because sometimes in the heat of the moment, there's that you want to be, but you have to stick to your ground and look at the longer picture. And very important, don't ignore what could be a really bad situation. So let's say something breaks at your firm, it's something somehow negative is happening, and you're dealing with it, and maybe you just issue a simple statement, and that might be enough. But you do have to keep watching what's being said, because you don't want then this statement. Sometimes the thing is, things move fast with social media, but I think you also have to remember it kind of has a long life too. So sometimes it takes some time for what might be in the legal circles first, then it goes to more like the business circles, and then it goes to Main Street. So sometimes it could be a 3-4 day event where this news is trickling, and that's why you need to keep a close eye, because you don't want to think, oh, we did our statement and now we're all done, because the legal press or the New York Times isn't asking anymore. But there could be this whole chorus starting on social media. And just some points about minimizing your chance of being caught in a crisis. You can never completely, avoid one. They're probably going to happen at some point. But ways that you can try to do your best is to take off the rose-colored glasses, which I'm probably very good at this point, and I'm always the negative person in meetings. But you do. I think this is the key thing of being a communications director, some sort of communications role. You need to think about the worst case scenario. So even if people think you're going kind of overboard, that's your job. And thinking through every angle, working through the scenarios in your mind, and it's almost like working out a Q&A, or it's going back to, again, those basic PR principles. But and with social media, a key question is, do you really want to start a conversation? Because like Nancy said, and like many of people have said, social media isn't just a platform for you to broadcast your good news, or for you to say, oh, I'd like to talk about career advice today. Everyone ask me a career question. People are going to ask what they want to ask. And if you have been in some situation where maybe opening your door to the whole world isn't the best thing, then you need to maybe wait or think of another way to achieve what you're trying to achieve. And that goes right in with internal pressures that you can get to get some good press. And, well, firm A is doing that. Why can't we do that? Every firm is different, and every firm is dealing with different situations. So if your firm is in a particular situation where you don't feel like, there could be a risk in opening yourself up to all these questions, then that's what you have to advise that you don't do at that time. Again, the control question, you just can't control people. So you need to get over that and just think about controlling yourself and your response. And your internal processes, make sure that your social media is under the direction of someone who has PR judgment. It's not this separate fun department. It's in the boring PR department now. No, but truly, it's something that because I've had incidences where maybe you get to a new place where you're working and you find out that oh, well, the Twitter feed has always been populated by some person who writes a blog, tells someone in IT, and then they post it on Twitter. So that's a dangerous situation. So you just want to make sure that it gets centralized. And we just have some final summary points, which are social media is the great equalizer, as Nancy explained. It's not about you. The importance of being nice and sincere, and that is what will make you memorable. It's PR, so never let your guard down. They're after you. No, just kidding. But it is. Don't get swept away and the fun side. Letting go of the control where you have to, but then harnessing it where you can. And we have one final thought, which I'll let Nancy do.
It's a big build-up. And one final thought, if everybody in the world would just remember this, then I think we'd all be in good shape. And it's not only that if everybody in your firm would do this, but then if we could all do this with one another, then I think we'd never have to worry about this. But that's if they would just keep calm and call a legal marketer. We would all be much better off. And we have stickers of that for all of you. Yeah, and many. So if you think it's gonna rub off and you want to wear it again tomorrow to remind people, I brought a bunch, like a bunch. No, it's just a sticker. It's just I looked for tattoos. We think alike. I looked for tattoos, Stephanie, but this was much easier. So we have these, but now and if anybody has any questions. Yeah, God love them. It's cute, wasn't it? You know what? If you have one and it's LinkedIn and you have a lot of room, go ahead. Better safe than sorry. Obviously, it's much easier to do on LinkedIn than it is on Twitter, which Florida would have us do. But yeah, go ahead. I mean, if it's going to make everybody feel better and you have the space to do it, go ahead and do it. That would not be the fight I would fight.
So like if there's a comment on Facebook or something that says you're terrible or, and I'm not a trained lawyer in this area, so yeah, I mean, really what my point is that you don't want to, you can't be caught, you can't be actively managing, if somebody just says something bad about you, take it down, and that will make it better. Because people will, it's about, you don't want to be caught in a lie or kind of playing both sides. So, really if something is just, kind of, not accusing you of malpractice or, I mean, that's where it gets into different areas. But, so if something is overtly racist, it's really offensive to groups of people, then you have grounds to take that down and nobody's going to criticize you for that. I think my main point is getting into these things of when is the public going to say, wait, but you said this and now you're saying that. That's my point.
Just because we're recording this, and the whole discussion was about when is it okay to delete any content on social media, and then Stephanie's suggestion was that if you have a tool like Hootsuite or any of the other individual or enterprise tools, then make sure you're monitoring in those tools. Thanks.
That's actually my law firm. So as I know, that was a planted question. So, and we didn't apologize on social media. We issued a statement, which was an apology. So, I mean, I think if you, in a situation like that, you, right, because our statement was the apology and that was the right thing to do, that ended up getting picked up in different places. We didn't actively post it, and I suppose if you were in the situation where the issue that you're dealing with originated on your page, and we don't use Facebook, for example. We just have more limited content there, so that just wouldn't be the place. I suppose if you're the type of firm that you put all your things on social media and you're issuing a statement, and then it would make sense that, yeah, your statement's there, so it's just like another official statement that your firm is issuing. That's not the way we work, so we didn't actually put it there.
What happens is the law firms can be better advocates for their clients, especially with the media, and they're not thinking about it as a service to their clients. So, it's a way to tell the law firm how to be more successful when they haven't thought about that. So, just an idea.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, I think we're done.
Are we done? Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.